Good evening, everyone. Welcome to tonight's workshop. The topic is a light in the darkness, especially in today's current events. I thought it would be important for me to talk about this. I'm just gonna, I don't know what I just did. Oh, there we go. I'm just gonna move this over here just a little bit so that I'm looking at the camera. Perfect, thank you. In preparation for tonight's workshop, I was reading through some of my previous workshops, and I discovered one that I had written in 2017. It says, "How do I find peace amongst the chaos?" I really enjoyed reading it, and so I'm going to find a way to try to publish it. It unfortunately wasn't videotape. There's just the written notes, like a written document, but I think it's well worth the read. So I'd like to open up tonight's workshop with a quote from George Addair, the founder of Omega Vector. He says, "A light bearer cannot be influenced by the opinions of others." And so in today's current events, I wanted to be able to bring this topic to us. But as a self-proclaimed philosopher and a Buddhist, I can't turn this into politics. I won't turn this into negative upset and anger, and I'm not going to raise my fist and shout at the top of my lungs. For 30 years, I've been a volunteer at Omega Vector. For 30 years, I've been practicing, reading, teaching, learning the Ageless Wisdom teachings. And it is my responsibility, I feel, to continue to bear light. And it is my responsibility to remind you, my fellow travelers, that you have the responsibility to shine your light as well. Many religions call the inner realm, connection to God, the soul, the teachings, they call it the light. And that is what I refer to. The light resides in each one of us. Some of us have brilliant light, and some of us, our light is quite small, barely a flicker. But the light still exists. I mentioned earlier that Eleanor Roosevelt has a quote, one of my favorite quotes. She says, "It is better to light one small candle than to curse the darkness." And I feel so connected to that light, to that line, because I feel like I'm a little light, a little tiny light in the darkness. But that's what I would prefer to focus on, that little tiny light, instead of all the darkness around me. In today's current events, I find this to be so true. When I look around and I listen, I see emotional turbulence. I see emotions running amok. Emotions are rising to the top. Yes, there was an injustice. Absolutely, there was an injustice. However, injustice is nothing new. Search in our history, and you will find there's more events and more moments of injustice than I'm able to share with you. I can think about several of them off the top of my head. The Tibetans who are persecuted by the Chinese for their religion. The millions of individuals, Jewish, persecuted by the Nazis for their religion. Slaves that were persecuted by the Egyptians and taken advantage of, treated as if they didn't even have a voice. Tyrants that rose to power and used their power to persecute the less fortunate, the ones beneath them. Saddam Hussein, Osman bin Laden, Ivan the Terrible, Attila the Hun. You know, the list is endless. It really is. It's endless. So injustices have filled our history. Humanity, we know injustice. I think the difference now, the thing that stands out, that makes it different, is the social media, the iPhones. Everyone has one of these. Everyone knows it's right there. It's prevalent. It's in your face. It's happening, and we see it now. I've talked about this before, so this is nothing new. The idea that we could jump on top of it and make our voices heard and flex our internet muscles, as I used to say. But the concept here is, when we think about emotions and how emotions start to fly, I think about a hurricane. So when a hurricane is spinning and it's creating emotion and it's causing violence and destruction. What it does when it eats the items in its path, it gathers them up into its force. And as it's spinning, those items are thrown out and projected out in all directions, causing harm. And so what came to my mind this morning was the idea that our events today are much like a hurricane, and they are eating up anything in its path and throwing out more violence, more destruction, more destruction. And so is there a way that we can combat this? Is there a way that we can not feed the violence, not feed that emotional turbulence that's happening? Is there a way? Well, of course there is. That's what the Ageless Wisdom teachings talk about. One of my favorite handouts from George, he wrote this in 2006, I think it is. It was the distinction between external light and internal light. The distinction he used was, the external light affects the exterior, and internal light is from within. Again, we're going to call it the Ageless Wisdom teachings. I want to just read. These are his words, so I want to read them accurately, thus the glasses. As you think a thought of love, your light frequency shifts to violet or above. Now, in this, let me just pause for a moment. We talk about the different levels of human beings. I'm not just a physical body. I have a body, I have emotions, I have thoughts, I have dreams, desires. I can just say spirit within me. So there's different levels. And the different levels have vibrations. Science teaches us this. Everything vibrates. My glasses, these have a vibration. The phone has a vibration. My body vibrates. The heart has a vibration. My breathing, everything is a vibration. There are high vibrations and low vibrations. So when we're correlating the light and the inner light to vibrations, we're talking about the high vibrations and lower vibrations that affect us internally, which therefore affects externally. So he says, as we think a thought of love, our vibration shifts to higher. If we go through the color spectrum, violet is the highest vibration, red is the lowest vibration in the color spectrum. When we think a thought of hate, it shifts our vibration down low to the low vibrations, like the red. We go down below. Malice creates low vibration. I'll say that again. Malice creates low vibration. Now, when I think about malice, I think about somebody who intentionally is causing harm. Somebody who intentionally goes out to start a violent act. Somebody who posts something intentionally to elicit upset and anger. That's malice. When we intentionally put out, whether it's social media, in my conversations, in my actions, when I'm intentionally wanting to elicit upset, harm, and injury, that is malice. And malice causes low vibration. Malice creates vibration of judgment. It feeds greed, gossip, hate, retaliation. Although those are malice and they are low vibrations. When I have a low vibration, it diminishes the light within me. Virtue, on the opposite end, virtue creates high vibration. This is where we have praise, love, acceptance, sacrifice, giving, compassion. All of those are high vibrations, virtuous. They're high vibrations. So when I think about low vibrations and high vibrations lead us to joy and enthusiasm. Low vibrations, they bring us to despair, depression, and failure, to anger, upset, the things I've already repeated. Revenge, jealousy, and violence, these reduce my light to a flicker. When I'm involved in that, my thinking, my actions, my emotions, it reduces my inner light, my internal being, my internal light to a flicker, barely even seen. If you've ever looked into the eyes of somebody who's filled with hatred, you could feel it. If you've ever been around somebody who's filled with vengeance, it's almost like you could feel it in the air. I'll stop there. So since light represents consciousness, it is imperative It is imperative that we learn to choose our own thoughts and our own feelings. So in other words, we have to rise above our emotions. Now in Omega Vector, we talk about this at great length. In all of the workshops that we do, we talk about rising above our emotions. A human being has the ability to rise above our emotions. We can be emotionally led, or we can rise above our emotions and choose our thinking. We can choose the way that we wish to express our lives. We can choose the way we respond to events. So it's either react or respond. When I react, I have a low vibration. When I respond, I'm leaning towards a higher vibration. So again, it is my responsibility to choose my vibrations. Physical light in the electromagnetic spectrum, physical light travels at a speed of 186,000 miles per second. Per second. It's fast. Physical light travel, but we can track it. We can track how fast it is. Internal light is instantaneous. It can't even be tracked. My internal light is faster than me snapping a finger. It cannot be tracked. It's instantaneous, omnipresent. So the internal light is often, that's why it's often considered to be connected to God. It's the present moment, it's now, in the now. Thought that can span the universe in an instant, this light, can be everywhere at once. Everywhere at once. Other subjects that George pertained to is the idea of love and fear. He protested or proclaimed that the opposite of love is fear, not hate. George said that fear creates upset, anger, anxiousness, depression, stagnation. Fear can cause great harm. We can incite riots. That all of that comes from fear. The idea that fear, mob mentality, that's fear. It's all fear-based. If I was born in the 1600s in Salem, I would be burned as a witch because, you know, I use Reiki and massage, or I have intuition, or I'm speaking up against a man. Bam, burn. Fear mentality. All of that is fear mentality. It's driven. Mob mentality, it's all driven by fear. So he says the opposite of fear is love. Human beings, we have the ability to be both full of fear or full of love. Now he correlates this back to the absence of light is fear. And the abundance of light is experienced as love. So the presence of light is love. The absence of light is fear. I think in the Bible somewhere there's please excuse me for paraphrasing, but love casts without fear. Like you cannot have love and fear at the same time. You either have love or you have fear. So when we have fear, there's an absence of light. When we have love, there's the presence of light. So that's something to consider, to remember. If I have that love within me, I'm casting light. Low vibration light means to create fear. Fear creates aloneness. Fear creates separatism. Fear creates disintegration. We must first, in order for me to elevate my light, we must first master our emotions. We have to master our emotions, which then can master our thinking. Only then can we be consumed by light. The idea is internal light. Only can I begin that through my thinking. And again, I have to rise above my emotions. When I rise above my emotions, I choose the moment. I choose how I respond or respond to an individual. Again, one of my other favorite quotes, aside from Eleanor Roosevelt, is Chris Prentice. And Chris Prentice says that I am the author of every next moment. I think this is beautiful. Every moment that comes to me, I can choose how to respond or write it. Being the author, I can write my next moment. How do I respond? Every moment I have a choice. Every moment I have a choice. Now, as a light bearer, I feel like it is my responsibility to choose light, to not be wrapped up in the emotions and the turbulence that is happening. I have to. My responsibility. I must respond with light. And to remind you to respond with light, to elevate my emotions, to elevate my vibrations, I must respond to light. My husband sent me this little passage today. He said, God said to man, build a better world. The man answered, how? The world is such a large, vast place, and it's so complicated. And I am so small and useless. There's nothing I can do. But God, in all his wisdom, said, just build a better you. I think that's beautiful to remind us, for everyone who feels if I'm not on the streets writing and screaming and yelling, I'm not doing anything. That's not true. We can do everything. We can do something every moment. In every moment, I can choose light in my thoughts, in my words, in my discussions, in my actions, in my social posts. I can be the light. I don't have to fill my post, my thinking, my voice with anger and upset and malice. I can rise above that. And I can choose to fill my thinking, my conversations, my interactions, my social media posts with love, with compassion, with kindness, with forgiveness. I can choose that. Now, this may not be popular. And as I said back at the very beginning when I first started speaking, a light bearer cannot be influenced by the opinions of others. That I must stay true to what I believe. I must stay true. You know, I was thinking about Gandhi. He did such a peaceful protest. He protested, but he did it with peace. He did it with light. That to me is a beautiful illustration of what we are capable of. All of us are capable of this. When I think about light, I also think about hope. Hope to me is such a beautiful word. It's such a high vibration. It's pure. When I think about hope, I think about purity. As a matter of fact, when the pandemic first hit, Oprah and Deepak Chopra from the Chopra Institute released for free the Bringing Hope. I don't remember the name of it. I apologize. But it's 21 Days of Hope meditations for free. Highly recommended. They do such a beautiful job in bringing about awareness on hope and the things that we can do. So with hope enables one to see light in the darkness. When I have hope, I'm like that candle that Eleanor Roosevelt spoke about. I'm that little light in the darkness. That's what hope does. Hope allows me to see that light. It allows me to encourage to move on. It encourages me to move on. Hope infuses us with courage and strength. It's contagious. Just like fear is contagious, hope is contagious. So instead of the negativity and the upset and the emotional disturbance, turbulence, I can choose to focus on hope. It doesn't mean I'm putting my head in the sand. It doesn't mean I'm invalidating an unjust event. It doesn't mean I'm pretending to choose to make it go away. No. All it simply means is I acknowledge injustice and I focus on hope. I acknowledge injustice and I put forth light. I was thinking about a story I used to tell in the classroom. It's written by Manly P. Hall. It's a story, The Way the Lonely Ones. And in short, it's a story about a gentleman who lived his everyday life, wasn't very content, saw a light up on the mountain, decided to climb it. When he got to the top, he saw this gentleman holding a lantern at the edge of the cliff. And he said, what are you doing? And he said, I am one who holds the light for humanity. There are several of us. And the traveler looked around, and sure enough, across the mountains, there are several other people standing there holding lanterns. And the traveler pretty much said, well, why? And he's like, because that is what my task is, to hold the light for humanity. So the traveler was so inspired by that, he took the light, and the sage went away. And as he stood there all excited about his newfound purpose, I'm going to hold the light. And all of a sudden the wind whips around, and he's like, oh man, I don't have a really good code. And then he hears, oh, and fear starts to set in, and doubt starts to set in. And before you know it, he begins to disdain the light. He can't take it anymore. He despises it. And that light went from brilliance to this little teeny flicker and flame. And then the sage comes back and says, you're not ready to do this yet. But he's encouraged because he has hope that he knows this man wants to make a contribution. And the gentleman goes back to his village and stuff and realizes that he had that taste of what he wanted to do, and he gave into the fear and lost what it is that he wanted. But that the gentleman who stood, the sage who stood there to hold the light, he reminded the traveler, you don't hold the light for yourself. I'm standing on the cliff. What does it do to hold the light for me? You hold the light for humanity. We hold the light for humanity to remind humanity what we're capable of. We hold this light for humanity as a light bearer. We hold this light for humanity to remind us that we have beauty, to remind us that we are capable of so much more than violence and malice and upset and vengeance. We hold this light not for ourselves, but we hold it to remind humanity and show them the path. As I said earlier, it is our responsibility, for those of us who've taken this path, it is our responsibility, if we understand it. If you understand compassion, patience, love, kindness, then it is your responsibility to hold that light, to share your light with humanity, and remind us what we're capable of, the greatness and beauty that lies within. So it is my hope that you fill your thoughts, your words, your actions, your conversations, your social media with the light. Thank you so much for joining me this evening. I look forward to seeing and hearing from you at our next workshop. Have a good night.